Hi there. I'm going to make this video about contracts for illustrators and authors and stuff like that. If you're coming from my YouTube channel, you might want to go to my blog, willterry.blogspot.com, and check out the rest of the article that goes with this if you're coming from another link or something like that. So part of what I'm talking about here is how to work with indie publishers, with authors, and how to deal with making money and organizing the money. So what I'm talking about here is how to work with indie authors, publishers, and with clients. And so anyway, um, let's talk about contracts a little bit. Okay, so one of the things that I think is important to know, and that is that if you have a contract, that doesn't necessarily mean, even if you're in the right, that you're going to get paid. So I think it's important to know that if you have a contract, um, the, the, the main purpose for me, for what the contract does, is it sets up and it tells people, both parties, if if you're dealing with an author and you're the illustrator or vice versa, it will tell you who's responsible for what, who's supposed to do what, and who owns what, and things like that. So it should clearly define those types of things. From there, if things go sideways, if something doesn't work out with the project that you're working on, good luck trying to enforce the contract. Again, that piece of paper is good to have. You should have it, but if something goes wrong, then it's up to the other party to come after you if they think they're in the right and if you've breached the contract. But if you think they've breached the contract, now you have to take them to court. So keep in mind, if you're working with someone out of state, it probably doesn't really matter if you have a contract or not, because if you're a little guy like me, not really little, but if you don't have the means, if you're not well off, if you don't have a big stockpile of money, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you dearly to go after someone, especially in another state. And also, let's say you're in the right, and let's say you go after somebody and you take them to court and you get a judgment against them. You still don't necessarily get paid, because then there's all kinds of things that they can do to still avoid paying you. If they're little, they can say, you know what, I'm gonna file for bankruptcy, and then you get nothing. They can just not pay you, and then you have to take them back to court again. You have to go. You have to try to figure out where they work and see if you can attach a lien. If they're the kind of person that would screw you in a contract, chances are there are other people that are already in line trying to get theirs from these people, and so they might already have a lien on them, and it's like, get in line. So I think a lot of people put a lot of faith in contracts, and I think that it's good to do, but I think that most people, I think you have to do your homework before you partner with someone, and that's really the best protection you can have, to try to find out what type of person this person is. Because if someone is going to be unscrupulous, if someone's going to break a contract, they're going to do it with or without a contract. To me, the more valuable part of the contract is to kind of have a guide to say, um, this thing that we worked on together. Maybe it's an ebook, maybe it's a book, maybe it's some other kind of project. But it's like a guideline to say, oh, you know what? Now that this book is selling so well, let's start merchandising and making some toys or some other things. Well, what happens when we do that? What percentage do we get? Those are things you should already have worked out, so you can just go back to the contract and go, oh, it says right here that if we make something else, if we sell movie rights, if someone wants to pick it up for a cartoon, you get this much, I get this much. And really, and then you can, and if you're good people, there's no arguing when you have that contract in place. If you don't have a contract, it's funny how people's memories start to fade. So I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine who used to live in Park City, and was primarily an advertising illustrator. And I don't want to use his name, but he probably wouldn't mind. But anyway, so he, back, maybe 15 years ago, this is when this happened, he was doing mostly advertising illustration. And he did some menu boards for Sizzler. You guys, most of you probably heard of Sizzler. It's a restaurant chain. I think they're pretty much throughout the U.S. I don't know what their reach is, but they sell franchises. And there was a franchise owner out here in the Western United States, who owned 5 Sizzler stores, and that franchise owner hired my friend to make illustrated menu boards for inside the stores. So you go in, you get in line, and you could see the menu had seafood and steaks and stuff, and they were all illustrated. He got compensated well for the job, and then I believe it was about a year later, a friend of his called him from Florida and said, "Hey, great job on those menu boards for Sizzler." And he said, "Where are you? Where are you? Aren't you in Florida?" "Yeah." "Well, the contracts specifically stated that they were only to be used on the 5 Sizzler locations out here in the Western United States." So he knew he had a breach of contract right there. He went back and he looked at his contract, and sure enough, it said in there, and it listed the addresses of the 5 Sizzler stores that it was supposed to be used in. So he called the franchise owner and said, "Hey, we got a problem." He talked to the secretary, and the franchise owner would never return his calls, was always out, never would take his calls. And he wasn't getting anywhere, and so finally he decided to call the corporate offices of Sizzler, and he said, "Hey, we've got this breach of contract. I know that I didn't contract with you specifically, but you are the corporation, and I'm trying to get a hold of this guy. What do I do?" kind of a thing. And they kind of put him off and said, "Well, you got to deal with that franchise owner." And the franchise owner, he finally got a hold of him, and the franchise owner said, "Oh no, that's a corporate thing. They wanted to use those. They were the ones that breached the contract." So it was kind of like a situation where there were 2 people pointing fingers at each other, and nobody wanted to take responsibility. So he said, "Well, you're in breach of contract. I need to be compensated for the extra usage." And they just, all of a sudden, both parties stopped returning his calls. So he finally decided to get an attorney involved, because he looked at his contract. It was black and white, that he was in the right. So he looked at his contract, took his contract to an attorney. The attorney said, "Yeah, this is cut and dry. Let's go after these guys." So the attorney started handling it, and the attorney did not take it on pro bono. So my friend had to pay him a retainer, and then had to pay him hourly. And about the time that his bill was getting close to the $10,000 mark, the attorney called my friend up and said, "I can tell by the way that both parties are acting that they want to outspend you. They think that they can push this thing out to where they'll bleed you dry with my services, and they'll be successful in doing most." Of course, I don't know anything about um, legal acrobatics, but they filed motions, I guess, and did enough things to where they could keep this attorney busy, trying to undo the mess that they were making. Anyway, long story short, his attorney said, "You need to fire me because we're not going to win this." So my friend, who was actually from Russia, and is, I guess, I probably shouldn't stereotype, but he's a fighter. And anyway, so he says, he got mad at his first attorney, and he went to a second attorney and explained to him what the deal was, and they said, "Oh, we'll get him to pay." And about the $10,000 or $15,000 mark with the second attorney said, "These guys are good. They're going to outspend you. They can outspend you. You will not win this case." And he's, my friend is complaining, "It says right here, I've got the legal why can't we get them in court?" And he just said, they're not going to go to court because you don't have enough money to get them into court. And it's a sad commentary on our system. That's not really where I want to go, but I mean, it's sad that you can be right, but in the end, the big guy is going to win. So he lost 20 grand, 25 grand, trying to exercise a contract that had been breached against him and was unsuccessful. That's one instance. but I can tell you that I've had 25,000 or 2,500 different, roughly 2,500 different projects and contracts with clients, advertising, editorial, children's books, design projects, and I have never had anyone breach a contract. I've never had anyone try to pull a fast one, and I personally, I really believe that if you're in bed with somebody who is a bully, you're going to get bullied. And from this example, you probably aren't going to be able to compete financially to actually enforce that contract. The same goes for copyrights. And copyrights are the same way. I don't want to really talk about copyrights right now, but just because you have registered a copyright, you have to pay money to exercise that copyright and to protect that copyright and to make sure that you're compensated if someone breaches it and someone steals your stuff. And anyway, so our system is such that you have to pay money to haul someone to court. So I really believe this, that if someone's going to break a contract, they're going to break a contract with or without one. I really believe that the value in having that contract is really so that if things go well later on, or if things go bad later on, you have a guide where you can say, look, you're a good person, I'm a good person. Let's use this contract that we already set up, that we already agreed to, and let it tell us how to split up monies, how to split up rights, different things like that. Tell us who owns what, and I think that that's pretty much, for me, what a contract is for. So, anyway, thanks for watching.